Hey guys, here's a little project I've been working on. Essentially, it's kind of ugly. The stock is made from a piece of copper pipe and a scrap piece of wood that I found. The purpose of this gun is not to be cool, not to modify the gun just because, you know, I want to go hunt with it or anything. The whole purpose of this gun here was so that I could use up all of my spare parts, spare Crosman parts, and whatever else went into this, even scrap aluminum, that type of thing, and an extra scope I had laying around. So the whole purpose of this was essentially just to test myself to see if I could piece something together. I nicknamed it the MacGyver gun just because it slapped together something like MacGyver would do, even though he hates guns. But we won't get into that. So the base of it is a Crosman 1377. The valve in it is a Crosman 1377 with a stainless steel extension which threads into this block here. The block then has a channel that goes into it and then down 90 degrees. And then there's a 1/8 inch NPT to 1/8 inch NPT to an ASA adapter. And then I also drilled an extra hole here for a Foster fitting. So it's not multi-pump pneumatic obviously anymore. It's pre-charged pneumatic / HPA / CO2. And I made it to where I could thread a 9-ounce CO2 tank onto it. I can also thread my honkin' 20-ounce tank on here, which makes it look really goofy, but believe it or not, this is full of CO2. Believe it or not, it actually does pretty good with CO2. So the other parts that went into this, 2240 grip frame, same thing as the 1377 with black 2240 grips on it. It's got a Crooked Barn Ultimate breech on it, which back in the day was the awesomest upgrade ever. Yes, I said awesomest. It has a 3/8 dovetail cut into the top of it. And then I'm running UTG 3/8 dovetail to Weaver adapters for the scope mounts. And then this is just a cheapo Tasco 3-9, yeah, 3-9 by I think 30 or 40 or whatever the heck that is. Got that at Walmart cheap, it was on clearance. The gas block actually has female threads, they're 5/16 24. And the stainless section that goes onto the front of the Crosman valve is a female, or a male thread to mate with that. Haha. So basically, it gets the air through to the valve there. That's drilled out internally. I made the piece on my lathe, threaded it and everything. It's half 20 and then 5/16 24 with a 120 through hole into the valve. The transfer port has been reamed out to .205. I think it's a number 5 drill bit. And then the transfer port is a machined piece of Delrin. I had problems with the Delrin leaking. I just don't know if my measurement was off by a couple thousandths or what the deal was. So I actually completely wrapped the transfer port seal in Teflon tape. And then essentially fired the gun with air in it. And that actually opened up the .205 hole to supply air to the barrel, and it shot out a bunch of Teflon tape and stuff. But it seals actually quite well now. I also, on the transfer port itself, it's round. I rolled up some Teflon tape and wrapped it around. They're kind of like an O-ring, and that's what you see bulging out here. It's just a layer of that, just to be sure. But that worked for me. I also upgraded the breech screw in here. It's some weird, I think it's a 548 screw. I didn't have a tap for it, so I just kind of drilled the hole out in the receiver tube and then forced the screw into it. And that seemed to work well enough. It's a much bigger screw, and I got it pretty dang tight without stripping it out. So the other part about this block here, it doubles as a barrel band, so it's actually holding the barrel down. And then I'm not sure I drilled this out to 7/16, which is the diameter of the barrel. And what I found is that I couldn't get the breech on sliding the barrel in, because the barrel has to be into the breech so that the transfer port seal can mate. So I drilled this out to 1/2 inch, and that allowed me to get the breech and barrel in at an angle and then set it straight down onto the transfer port and the hammer pin. So what I did was I machined a little piece of brass. Maybe you can see it in there. It's basically a half round piece of brass that's 1/2 inch on the outside and 7/16 on the inside. And essentially you just slip it in there, and then it has 2 set screws, which are also from a 2240 barrel band. Those are 832s. And then those push down and clamp the barrel in, which also helps seal the transfer port from the front end. So it's kind of a tension barrel setup. Well, at least to here anyway. But it works really extremely well. The Foster fitting, I wasn't thinking about it. I was like, oh yeah, I'll just drill another one in there and then hook it up, and I can just fill the tank with it on the gun. Well, me being so involved in this whole project overlooked the fact that this is not a check valve. So all I did was I took, I think it's a 1032 screw, it might be an 832, button head stainless screw, and I just put an O-ring on it and then put it in there and threaded this in, and it actually seals up to 1500 psi. So that's a good tip if you want to make your own check valve Foster fitting, which is pretty cool, I think. So the other problem I had is I didn't have enough stainless scrap to continue the front of the valve out further. So as you see here, I had to cut the trigger guard to clear the valve, the ASA valve thumb screw. And then I also had to use a low profile button head screw. This is also drilled and tapped to 1032 into the body, into the new valve body front section, and so that can clear when I thread it in. Now it's kind of ghetto, but this also acts as a trigger guard front, so you can't really get your finger in there any other way than straight through like that, which is kind of neat. It's ugly as crap, but whatever. Onto the stock here. I'll flip it around. So yes, it's ghetto, but yes, it works fine. I might need to get a little butt pad on it to extend it, just to keep my cheek back further. This is just 3/4 inch copper plumbing pipe and a copper 3/4 inch cap, and then I drilled 3 holes opposing, well, not opposing, but kind of offset of each other in a triangular shape, and then drilled the cap out to 1/4 and then I have a 1/4 button head inside. So power adjuster is not really an option on this. It's got a beefier 2240 hammer spring in it. Like I said, just parts I had laying around. This was just a scrap of wood. It was really lightweight wood, and it happened to already be cut in this shape. I just had to cut the point off of it here, and then I just rounded the edges with a rasp, sanded it, and it's got a coat of varathane on it. And then I just drilled through the stock here with a 1032 lamp screw, I think it is, and then countersunk that in there. And so that keeps the stock from twisting and coming off. And then, you know, it works. I can't really say anything other than that. I would like to do a more fancy stock, possibly with carbon fiber and whatnot, but you know what? The whole purpose of this whole gun was so that I could piece it together with parts I had, and that's exactly what happened. It works, it shoots great. I also made a little muzzle brake for it. It's just a solid piece that is basically just set screwed on with the 1032. It's just for aesthetics. Machined this aluminum piece out of an old muzzle brake that I made for a 2240. Now this is also a 2260 barrel, which I hear you can't get anymore. I'm not sure on that, but this is about a 23-inch barrel. I had to cut the flat for the sight screw, or the old plastic sight slips on. There's a little flat on it. Cut that off, recrowned the barrel, and then I also cut off the old transfer port and redid all that. So this is mostly for aesthetics. just because it makes the gun look pretty neat. And then as far as accuracy, goes, it's not bad. So this is with Beeman Cro-Magnum 22 hollow points. This is at 30 yards, and I actually range found it with a Nikon rangefinder. So as accurate as those are, this is 30 yards. These were also Beeman Cro-Magnum hollow points, and I mean, I don't have a ruler with me, but let's see here. Here's a standard pen to kind of give you an idea of the size of the groups. This is once I got it dialed in. I had a flyer, and then this one here is kind of just random. One thing I noticed about the Cro-Magnum pellets, which a lot of people online have also experienced, is the Cro-Magnum pellets will do great. You'll have an awesome group going, and then all of a sudden it just starts shooting around the target, and there's really no rhyme or reason to it. It's just essentially it's just the pellets, I think. And I'll have another video on the build process coming up soon, so subscribe and you'll get a notification of when that shows up. I hope you like the gun. It's kind of a piecemealed MacGyver gun, as I called it, but I really like it. It shoots great. I hope to do a trigger shoe or a different trigger and maybe some grips.